So you're ready to play the strongest rogue build of the season, huh?
Here I come. Here I come.
I'll show you how you can start farming monoliths at level 30. Continue to fly through all the maps and one-shot everything. And once you're geared enough, you can start looking at a peak of 10,000 corruption. But for the ultra endgame version, I'm sending you over to Jews and his excellent build. For now, we'll focus on how you can level up and progress empowered monoliths quickly, investing as little time and effort as possible. And we'll start with taking a look at what makes this build so incredibly strong. For starters, this is an Umbral Blades build. This is where most of our damage comes from when we are in empowered monoliths and shadow daggers while leveling up, which can also spawn from our Umbral Blades. Now, to spawn these beautiful things, we're rocking Aerial Assault. And this is what makes the build so incredibly broken. Because for starters, this skill is one of the best mobility skills in the game. It allows you to fly through several screens, and once you land, you drop all of your Umbral Blades that clear everything around you. And once that is done, you dump a dive bomb on their sorry asses and continue onwards with your aerial assault again, as dive bomb also resets the cooldown of your aerial assault. This, of course, makes you fast as fuck. Now, I've played this build for 3 seasons straight, but there is one thing during this time that propelled this build from a decent build to fucking insanity. And that is the Razorfall sneakers. Normally, you throw 6 Umbral Blades per aerial assault, but using these and stacking dexterity, you can throw upwards of 15 of them. This in turn allows you to triple dip from dexterity stacking. It increases your Umbral Blade damage, but Falconer also has a passive that increases your Falcon damage from dexterity. And the Falcon is one fine creature. Did you know that some of them can obtain a diving speed of upwards of 350 kilometers per hour? That is the equivalent of a fuckton of speed for you stupid-ass Americans. All right, back to the skills. There are 2 we haven't talked about yet, Falconry and Smoke Bomb. Not much to say about Falconry other than it brings a lot of damage and utility. More interesting is the Smoke Bomb. Using this, we gain a massive utility bonus as it blinds, shreds armor, inflicts frailty. The list is long. Most importantly, though, it spawns shadows and dusk shrouds. The former we use for our dive bomb, and the latter grants us both defensives and a huge damage multiplier for our Umbral Blades. As you can understand, all of the skills that we're using synergizes quite well with each other, and there are a lot of interactions happening here. In this guide, though, we'll only focus on the important ones so you know what to prioritize when playing. And we'll start with the ones we need while leveling, following it up with the mid-game and end-game. Timestamps for the different scenarios will be below. All right, the Umbral Blades will be available at level 16. So what the fuck are we supposed to do until then? We're going to use Acid Flask and Puncture, of course. You'll get Acid Flask at level 4, and you'll use it until you find a decent bow. Once that is done, you fully focus on Puncture and Bleed until you're level 16, because the ailments, namely Poison and Bleed, are incredibly powerful early on. You then simply drag your balls through broken glass until you've obtained level 16. This is where the fun begins. You should now be able to unlock you Falcon, and the first points you're grabbing should be Explosive Blades and Cacophony of Steel. These are what makes the big explosions. Important here is also that you want Lethal Darkness, and you want to ditch your bow for a dagger. You can use 2 daggers, or do like myself and use 1 dagger and a shield. This is to spawn shadow daggers, dealing massive damage up until we've obtained a unique bow that we'll talk about soon. This setup is going to look the same up until you've obtained 30 points in the Falconer tree, basically using Shift for mobility, Smoke Grenade and Decoy for utility, and Umbral Blades for damage. Once you've got Aerial Assault, you spec into that and grab all points in Twilight Strike to spawn Umbral Blades when you use it. You're then going to unlock Dive Bomb, which you'll use instead of Decoy, and you'll continue onwards with this build version until you've obtained Talons of Valor, because that's when we respec to the Endgame Zoomer version. Just follow along in the planner until you've gotten to this point, because this is where shit gets interesting. Let's talk about my budget gear first, and we'll cover the skills step by step afterwards. You have two priorities you want to solve before anything else in the endgame. One of them should be finding a Talons of Valor. If you're in Merchant's Guild, then purchasing one with 1 LP is free, and double LP is cheap as hell too. This is where you'll smack on a bunch crit chance. The reason we want this though is twofold. First, it grants us a buttload of skill ranks, and secondly, it reduces the cooldown of all of our Falcon skills each time we crit, in turn allowing us to spam them like crazy. The second priority is grabbing a good pair of Razor Fall. The difference between a 0 and 1 LP is pretty massive here, and it is reflected in the prices. I'm just now able to get LP on this, so make sure to focus on hitting your prophecies, and the Weaver's Tree won these for sure. We talked about the reason of these being bonkers earlier. We simply need them to spawn more Umbral blades. And the reason 1 LP is even more bonkers is because you can then slam cooldown reduction, allowing you to spam aerial assault even more. Next up, we have the gloves. Lirakas are great if you can find a high roll on the crit multiplier. If not, go with defensive exalted gloves with some throwing damage. For the relic, the sphere is incredibly strong, granting you 120% increased damage as long as you do one thing. For the love of God, make sure that your intelligence is the same as your attunement. When it comes to the belt, chest, and helmet, don't even bother with getting uniques here yet if you don't have LP items. For the belt, you should have cooldown reduction and health primarily. If you have cooldown reduction here in your boots, then you won't ever need to manually cast Umbral blades again, as you'll just spam Dive Bomb and Aerial Assault instead. For the chest and helmet, a bunch of max life and dexterity, but again, if you can't get your hands on LP items, just go with exalted gear. Dex and max life is just that important. Dex does, however, have breakpoints, as you only spawn a new Umbral blade every 20 dex, so that may be good to be aware of. When it comes to the other gear pieces, you just follow the same priority as before, dex and max life. Then, we want throwing attack damage, and finally we cap our resistances to the best of our capabilities. Do all of this and you will succeed. When it comes to the idols, yes, you guessed correctly, we stack as much max life as possible. We can't get dex, however, so we instead get crit multiplier and throwing damage. And if you ever get to choose between going for max life or damage, always go with max life. It's currently what's holding me back from pushing to 1,000 corruption and higher. Alright, next up are the blessings. What ones you grab are up to you and what you need for your build, but here are some suggestions. In the Black Sun, I'm rocking Void Resistance because that's what I needed. But what you actually want here is Critical Strike Multiplier for sure. In the Lagan, we go for cold damage, as we'll be going with that for our Umbral blades. In the Age of Winter timeline, I'm using extra frostbite to freeze enemies more easily. In Spirits of Fire, we have Endurance, which should get you to the cap at 60%. If you're capped already, then go with Dodge here. And finally, Reign of Dragons. Here you have two options. You either go with Resistances or Crit Avoidance. If you go with all Rees, then it will be easier to gear, but you will have to rely on Smoke Bomb to blind enemies to get your crit avoidance up, or grab some crit avoidance rolls on your gear. It can be risky relying on the smoke grenade solution in case you get your rectum demolished by a ranged mob off screening you, but it's a solution if you want as much damage as possible and ease of gearing. Well, damn, nicely done, friends, if you've stuck out this far. It's now time to check out the skill interactions you need to know about. As most nodes are just damage, I think we'll walk our way through these rather quickly. For our Umbral blades, all the good stuff is up top. These 4 nodes together is what makes the blades large and explode. Wink wink. We also have Sub-Zero intrusion here, which if you want to go full physical damage instead, you can indeed ignore. But it does provide some great utility. For our falconry, it's just damage everywhere. We do, however, have 3 nodes down here that may be good to know about. They allow your falcon to benefit from your own stats. Bird of Prey is also a good one, allowing you to execute low-level enemies. For aerial assault, this is where we spawn our Umbral blades. We then have a bunch of utility, along with boosting our dive bomb damage. And finally, we use Featherstorm to slow enemies, as it will allow us to grab multiplicative damage from the passive tree later on. Smoke Bomb is an interesting one. It solves basically everything you may need. It slows, it armor shreds, grants us Dusk Shrouds, of course, which in turn allows us to get glancing blows for reduced damage taken and a bunch of dodge and Umbral blades damage. And if you thought we were done now, then that's just the nodes up top, because next we get Crimson Shroud stacks, decreasing our damage over time taken. We get throwing damage, and it spawns shadows, which our dive bomb will utilize. And finally, it grants us Silver Shroud stacks when we use it, allowing us to get ward and free dodges. Alright, and then finally we have our dive bomb. We use this both for utility and damage. We have Talon blades granting us additional damage both from itself and Featherfall. We have Cloud Gatherer extending the smoke grenade. And finally we have a bunch of damage, both via our falcon itself and via shadow falcons that spawn from, well, our shadows. Geez, my man or woman. This is looking to be one long-ass video because we're not done yet. We still have the passives to look at. Let's do it. We need 20 rogue passives, so we throw them all at the dex and defensive nodes. You're then going to focus fully on the falcon tree until you've obtained 75 nodes. Unless you need one thing for your build. Do you remember? Yes, exactly. If you're close to a dexterity breakpoint, then you definitely should start grabbing some dexterity nodes from the Blade Dancer tree early, as you'll then spawn an additional Umbral blades. Alright, and when it comes to the falconry tree, it's rather simple. We first have some damage, along with getting our falcon to scale via dexterity. The triple dipping, if you remember. We then have some damage for us and our falcon, followed by a bunch of glancing blows and defensives. We of course want our abilities to be instant, and we also have relentless talons, which will be our main source of healing. It's then time for more damage. Glancing blows and defensives, followed by finish it all off with damage from slow stacks, which we got from several sources, finesse them, which gets us crit capped, or a bunch of damage if you go the big schlong route, and finally tailwind for a shit ton of damage. And now, my friends, we are finally done. There is but one thing left. I'm just shitting with you. It's time to learn how to play this build. It's brain dead, as all builds should be, so I think you'll catch on quickly. The rotation for mapping and bossing is the same. You want to use aerial assault as frequently as possible. When it's off cooldown, you spam your dive bomb and falcon strikes. If you ever come across an elite or boss, then you need to make sure to drop a smoke grenade on him or yourself. If you drop it on him, then you're blinding him and gaining a bunch of damage buffs. If you drop it on yourself, then you get Dusk Shrouds making you immortal and also granting a bunch of damage. So preferably, both of you will stand within it. Finally, if you have all of your skills on cooldown, then you can spam out some Umbral blades manually. If you've got a lot of cooldown reduction, then this is not possible, but I don't, so I'm still doing it. And if you ever run out of mana, which you shouldn't, then you simply spam less or grab mana cost reduction on your dive bomb. Alright friends, that's all for this one. Let me know what you want to see next, drop a sub, and I'll see you in the next one.